Hey everybody, Paul Mack here. I've got another viewer question. This one comes from Kirk. He says, watched your Q&A. I have a question. I sent you pictures of my scythe last week. It was handed down to me and it's in good condition. Should I preserve the wood, snath, and nibs, and how? I was thinking linseed oil. Should I sand it first? Well, Kirk, for your situation, since this is a tool that has some sentimental value attached to it, it's been handed down in your family for generations. If it were me, I might not do anything to it. And it depends on what where you're going to be storing it. If you're not going to be using the tool, if you're going to be just storing it or putting it in a prominent place in your home, maybe in the living room above the fireplace or wherever, so that you and your kids and your grandkids can look at it and admire it, I probably wouldn't do a thing to it because you don't want to change it in any way from how it's been handed down over the years. You want to be able to admire the state that it's currently in, all the work that's been put into it, the years of sweat and handling the thing and working with it. You want to be able to enjoy the sentiment of it. So I might not do a thing in the world to it. Now, if you're going to be, putting it out on the front porch, outdoors, well, then maybe you might want to put a light film of oil on the metal part so that it doesn't rust any further. It just kind of depends on what you're going to be doing with it. But I assume since it's sentimental, you're going to be taking care of it indoors, and therefore I would do really nothing to it if it were me. I got a story to tell you. One time I was in my dad's barn, and we came across my grandpa, his old single stock plow, and my dad said I could have it, take it back to where I was living at the time in Tennessee, and even use it. And I thought, great, that'll be fun. It's something very sentimental to me. And so I took the plow back home with me, and I got to looking at it and thinking, you know what, I want to restore that thing completely. And so, I guess I maybe cleaned up, had a bull tongue plow on it and a buzzard wing plow on it. The plow bolt was still moving. And so I cleaned all those up and got them, I guess, somewhat less rusty. And I decided I would paint it and get it back to the way it might have originally looked. I had no idea if it was painted or not. The wood was completely weathered. If it ever had been painted, the paint was completely gone. So I decided, for whatever reason, to paint it green. Afterwards, I was, pretty proud of it. And then I got to thinking, well, I don't know if that thing was green to begin with or not. Maybe I've gone astray from the way it used to be. And it kind of, I was kind of bothered by it. I was like, man, I guess I wish I hadn't painted it at all. I wish I'd left it the way it was. There's a little bit of regret there for having painted it green. Now, the rest of you may be thinking, well, I've just recently acquired this tool or that tool. How should I approach fixing it up? Maybe you want to use it. Maybe you don't want to use it. Maybe you like Kirk and it's a sentimental tool. You're thinking, what should I do with this tool? How should I restore it or maintain it? Should I leave it sort of the way it looks, weathered, old, 70, 80, 100 years old, or should I fix it up? Well, the answer to that question is entirely up to your preference, but I'm going to give you a few things to think about in the process. And the answer to that kind of depends on, for me at least, several other things. For one, like in Kirk's case, if it's an heirloom tool that's been in your family and, grandpa used it, or your dad used it, your grandpa used it, your great-grandpa used it, all the way on back, like I recommended to Kirk, I might not do a thing to it because you want to be able to appreciate the way it is now, the age. I mean, you can't recreate age. It takes 100 years to make a 100-year-old tool look 100 years old, if you know what I mean. And especially, if that heirloom tool is beyond using, it's so worn out. Maybe the parts are so corroded that if you started to use it, it would tear up further, and you wouldn't want that. I mean, it's an heirloom. You wouldn't want to destroy it by using it. So I might just hang it on the wall exactly the way it is, especially if it's a a climate-controlled environment, it's not going to deteriorate any further. I probably wouldn't nail it to the outside of the barn where it's going to be destroyed in 10 years anyway. So if it were an heirloom, that's how I might approach that. Maybe I would put a light film of oil on the metal parts just so that it doesn't rust further. Maybe I might do that. I don't know that I'd want to put linseed oil on the handles, because linseed oil has a way of making weathered handles look quite new again. Well, not completely new, but newer. And so I don't know that I would want to change it that much. So that's kind of the way I would approach an heirloom. But let's say that you've just recently acquired a tool. Maybe it's not your grandpa's old tool. I guess it was somebody's grandpa's old tool, but you recently bought it at an auction or whatever, and you're thinking, this has got a lot of use in it. This has got a few good years or several good years of use in it, especially if you take care of it. And if that were the case, if that were me, which I've actually done it before, two ways you can approach that. The first way would be to somewhat lightly restore that thing and get it back up to snuff in a usable condition. You might put linseed oil on the handles. In fact, if it's really weathered, sometimes when I buy old tools, they're really like this. When they're really weathered, it doesn't look like brand new wood anymore. It's got that kind of gray wood look. If it were still usable, which this one is, it's still got some use in it, I might put some oil, quite a bit of oil, linseed oil, into the wood handles. Now it's going to, especially if it's really dry, it's going to soak it up. There might be several coatings of linseed oil that you put in there before it soaks a lot of that up, and that's going to help preserve that wood a little bit more, and maybe keep it from wanting to crack if it had that tendency to want to do that. So I might do that, and I might lightly sand or grind or sandblast or do some electrolysis on the metal parts to get them nice and shiny again, and then of course sharpen it up or whatever, and free up any moving parts like this that are supposed to turn that don't turn. I might free that up, and then you've got a usable tool that's good to go maybe for another 70 years, 100 years, or whatever. That would be one approach. The second approach would be to make that tool look as if it's completely brand new. Now, this is something that, be careful. It could turn into a hobby for you, taking old tools and making them look like they've just come off the shelf in 1915 or whatever. And it's a lot of fun to do that. Some people, again, make a hobby out of it. And I must admit, it's pretty cool looking at tools that look absolutely brand new, that are maybe over 100 years old, 70 years old, or whatever. That's a lot of fun to look at tools like that. But sometimes I'm kind of torn. I think, but you don't now see all the old age in it, the patina in it. So I see it both ways. I'm kind of torn. Sometimes I look at a tool and I go, no, that needs to remain the way it is. And sometimes I look at one and I say, you know what? No, I'd rather see it the way it was when it was, first purchased or whatever. So it's really a preference thing. Now, there's something to keep in mind here. When you do that, when you take an old tool that has that patina on it, the metal looks old, again, it takes 100 years to make a 100-year-old tool look 100 years old. When you begin to change all that, as far as a collector is concerned, collectors who just collect tools and, for display or museum quality, to a collector, you have just ruined the value of the tool. In fact, the monetary value of that tool plummets when you take it back to a brand new condition like that. However, to a homesteader or farmer like you and I, who wants to use all these old tools, the price value, the monetary value tends to go up when you see an old tool that's has a lot of good years of use in it. So just keep that in mind, and that might be a factor in how you want to treat that tool. Do you want it to retain that collector's value, or do you want it to be quite valuable to a modern homesteader or farmer like yourself and me? You know, Cracker Barrel wants the thing to look old. They're not interested in putting, you know, brand new old stock on the walls. They want the thing to look like it's 100 years old. So just keep that in mind. Again, my view on these things changes with every tool or item that I look at. You may have seen my video on restoring the old 1903 patent year sorghum mill, the Golden's No. 3 sorghum mill. And on that, I decided to attempt to make it look as if it were in a brand new condition. And I still, you know, have no regrets for that. It's a beautiful machine, and hopefully it'll last another 121 years or whatever. And I admire it. I still, when I walk by it, I still think, oh, what a beautiful machine. I can't wait to grow some more sorghum and use it again. But then I also have an old wagon that needs quite a bit of work. The carriage portion underneath is still in good shape. The wheels are usable. I wouldn't go logging with it. And so the goal one day is to restore that thing. It needs a completely new bed on it, which I've had the lumber milled already. It's just waiting on me to have time to go restore it one of these days. And probably, but see, I'm torn on exactly how to restore it, because I like the way old weathered wagons look. You know, that gray old wood, and you see this one, you could tell it was originally painted green, and that green is flaked off in most places, and it has that beautiful old weathered painted wood patina on it that you just can't recreate unless you have, you know, like 70 years to blow. And so I'm torn on what to do. Do I want it to, I mean, I love looking at wagons that are brand new painted, that looks like somebody just built it. It's just a sight to behold. I love seeing a team of good mules pulling a wagon like that. But I also love just seeing the old weathered wagons that have that age to them. So I am torn. I'm not sure exactly if I want to leave the wood unpainted so that it weathers on its own, and just get the rust off the metal parts, paint them black. Do I want to see a brand new bright green wagon with red or yellow undercarriage on it? I just don't know. And also, I have a John Deere Dane. It's about a 1941 hay press sitting in my pasture that I got just a few years ago, and I love the way it looks. It's got, you know, the little lichen moss stuff kind of growing on it, on the rusted metal parts, and it's just a beautiful piece of machinery, the way it looks right now. And yet I would probably like to see it restored to brand new condition and one day working, to where we can, you know, have some men operating it at our festival that we have every fall here in Catagap. I would just love to see that. I'd love to see it in brand new working condition, rolling and moving and pressing hay. But yet, I would probably miss the way it looks now. So I'm kind of torn on that one too. It's a rough life. And then I've also got a couple of pea threshers. Now, one of them has been in my family for a number of years and was passed around to all the different extended families back in the day and used. And it's not in really good shape. It's not at the moment usable. The only way to make it usable, which I'm quite interested in, would be to restore some of the metal parts and some of the wood parts completely. It's that bad off. And it's too big, you know, to leave it as it is, because, you know, you're not going to set it in the middle of your living room. It'd make an interesting coffee table. A little too tall. You couldn't prop your feet up on it. But, you know, you're not gonna set it around for decoration because it takes up too much room. So the only good it would be to actually thresh dry peas with it. And so I probably lean toward restoring that completely. It still would have sentimental value because most of the parts would be original, or half of them maybe. But then, not too many years ago, I acquired another pea thresher that has not been in my family, has no sentimental attachment to me personally, but it's in much better condition. Although the wood is weathered, you can still make out that originally the wood was painted red, And lo and behold, I got to looking very closely at the paint job, and very, very dimly you can see John Deere stenciled right on the wood. It was a John Deere wooden pea thresher, of course, with metal parts. I would love to restore that one completely to brand new condition, since it certainly has no sentimental value on it. Very little parts, very few parts would need to be completely replaced. But then I would want to paint it, but then you're going to paint over the original John Deere patina, and somebody's going to think, well, you just painted John Deere on that. It would be hard to prove that it really was a John Deere, I suppose, since you've completely painted over the old John Deere stencil, and I would hate to lose that. So again, I'm torn. I'll probably leave it the way it is. I love that John Deere stencil. And at the end of the day, even my old plow that belonged to Paul Mack that I painted green, I kind of wished I hadn't. Even though I wished I hadn't painted that, and though I have some regret about having done that, my kids, my grandkids, they're not going to care. In fact, they're going to probably appreciate the fact that I painted it, because now I'm part of the story of that tool in their eyes. And the same for you. Maybe you have regrets over having restored something that's been in your family completely, or maybe you're wondering, should I restore it? And if you go ahead and restore it and you pass that thing down, maybe even your grandkids will look at that tool that you've restored and go, yes, great-grandpa or great-great-grandpa used it, and then great-grandpa used the tool, and then grandpa took it and painted it purple, but they won't regret it like you might regret it. They will have an appreciation for it because you have become part of the story of that tool that they're so proud of, and that they will hang on the wall in their living room or sell to Cracker Barrel. So it still has a happy ending no matter what. So I hope this has got you thinking about your preferences as to how you want to restore tools. Do you want to restore it a little bit, enough to use? Do you want to not restore it at all because it's sentimental? You want to hang it on the wall, which would bring you great satisfaction and joy to look at? Or do you want to restore something completely? Maybe it's a new hobby that you want to start, taking old tools and making them look like they've just stepped off the pages of a 1910 Sears Roebuck catalog. So I hope it's got you thinking about those things. I want to remind you about my book, Common Trees and Their Uses for the Small Farm or Homestead. And why I'm reminding you about this book here and now is that it talks about over 30 different common trees that are probably common to many parts of the United States. And it discusses their uses for the small farm or homestead. In other words, what tree is good for making this tool handle or for that tool handle. There are different characteristics between even oak and hickory. Do you want to make an axe handle out of oak or hickory? Do you want to make a grubbing hoe handle out of oak or hickory? It matters. And this book will help you discover what those different wood characteristics do in different tools and what wood is best for what tool. So, Common Trees and Their Uses for the Small Farm or Homestead. You can go on my website, farmhandscompanion.com, and go to the general store page and drill down, and you can find this book along with some other books I have for sale. You'll really enjoy it. I'm sure you will. So, if you have more you'd like to talk about today's topic, if you'd like to add to the discussion, please feel free to do that in the comment section below. I always enjoy reading the comments, and I know everybody else does as well. And if you have another farm-related question that you'd like to ask, leave that in the comment section too. If I like it and I think everybody else will like the topic, we'll do it on a future Farmhands Companion question and answer show. So, until next time, I'm Paul Mack. I'll talk at you later. Eric McLaughlin, the bastard file is the only way, capital letters, to sharpen your scythe. Stones and peening hammers are for salesmen trying to get you to blow money on a waste of time. Then when you break your blade hammering it, you get to order a brand new one. Use a file. Well, Eric, no, I don't think that. Hey, wait a minute. You're a file salesman, aren't you? I got you figured out.